came to work as anthropologist in the Pacific really quite early, immediately after finishing school. I happened to work with the Pacific curator, which was pure chance, and he got me involved in moving very large Malangan sculptures. The museum had one of the earliest collections, other parts of the collection are in Hamburg and Berlin, and in many other museums in Basel is the more 20th century part of the Malangan production. Big sculptures, life-size, smaller to life-size to really house-size, going up 3-4 meters in height. So different scales, produced all for the final mortuary ceremony. It appears that production of these carvings for secondary funerary events commenced fairly rapidly around 1860, 1865, during the onset of colonial administration, the arrival of colonial administration on the island and the cessation of warfare. So warfare turned into a kind of quasi-gift exchange, because as it later, my research showed, what was exchanged were not the sculptures themselves, but the images, that is, the ideas surrounding the designs of the particular forms or the particular designs of each sculpture. And this curator sent me to study in Berlin, and then wrote my German master's dissertation about all the historical sources that are in German, obviously. So, and of course also the kind of theoretical writings on gift exchange. So I began to ask certain kinds of questions. How come? How is it possible that carvers, without the use of photography then, or without any kind of other aids, could actually reproduce something quite comparable over a distance of 30 years, so quite different generations of carvers even. And how is it possible that these objects were kind of almost, you could put them together and take them apart, so they seem to have some kind of composite nature to them. And very much like the idea, so it just happened that Ernst Gombrich, a famous art historian, had just brought out in 1984 a book called Pattern of Culture. So the idea of pattern, the idea of pattern began to be quite important. It's an idea that is still very important to me. So I took off to New Ireland and did my research there, stayed for 2 years, because I had to wait for a big Malangan ceremony to commence. And that gave me the time and just the intensity to really explore the ins and outs of the whole ritual or system of death. An incredible number of stages that follow the burial of a person through to the Malangan. It was a very rich fieldwork time, and it really supported, it was very interesting, because the elders with whom I worked, they said that I was the first one to ask this question. Where do these images come from? And they were immediately opening up that they actually acquire them. So rather than these images being kind of emblems of kinship relations that are on the ground, as many scholars had assumed, merely emblematic of kinship relations that already exist, it was actually about relations, economic as well as social political relations, that were meant to be created. So it was very much future directed.